It's very simple. And so that then when you bring that all together in the evaluation of personal outcomes, everything is aligned, everything is really focused on the outcomes that have been developed based upon the individual's goals and wishes and support needs.
That's really interesting. So there is that flow through in that
There
common
is that
language.
flow through. And it's an aligned system. Alignment, I think, is one of the concepts that has absolutely taken over in terms of people's thinking about what service delivery systems should be. They need to be a system that is aligned on the basis of input, throughput, and output. Because the way most systems work today is they're very dysfunctional because they aren't aligned.
Right. And you mentioned that yesterday as well, is that it's hard to even define it as a system when the components don't.
It's not a system.
Right.
It's a convoluted notion of something.
Right. So given that Community Living BC is really interested in creating an aligned system and creating a system, how would you propose that we begin? You know, right now we do have components,
yeah,
and there is some threads of continuity, but.
Well, I think a couple, three things. In terms of where you begin with the end in mind.
Right.
And so what you're doing in terms of your pilot project with those 7 agencies is exactly the place to begin. Mm-hmm. Because what's going to result from that is a lot of excitement, a lot of buy-ins, and a lot of creativity. And so you know where you want to go in terms of outcomes. The next two steps are how you approach the process and the input stage. Last night, one of the agency directors came up afterwards, and he's very interested in looking at the SIS in terms of the support intensity scale. And I'm not advocating that be what you do, but at some point you're going to have to look at the input stage and see whether or not there's any kind of continuity and consistency and standardization as to what goes into the development of your processes. It's at the input stage and the process stage where you're spending an unbelievable amount of money in terms of agencies. And so the question is, how much of what is currently in the input box is really functional? How much is really used? Now, I would guess probably 15% of an agency's budget is being spent on assessment for diagnostic purposes, for support needs, et cetera, et cetera. The question is any of that information is important at one level? Is any of that information used at the throughput stage? If it's only input related and it goes into that little file cabinet and never gets out of that file cabinet, then it's wasted time and money. So consequently, the second thing to do, I think, is to look at the input part of your process. And there you can look at the work that Calgary is doing, because they're investing a great deal of time and effort and expertise and have had some really good results of really focusing on that input stage. Mm-hmm. Once you get the two ends of your system in place, then you want to start focusing on aligning the process to the input and the output. Until you know for sure what goes in and what comes out, you don't know what to do in the middle. And so I'll be going to Calgary tomorrow, and one of the things that we're working on there is to really align that throughput part, because they have the outcome and they have the input. Now what they want to do is to make sure that their input, or their throughput rather, is aligned with what they're doing on the front end and what they're doing on the back end.
So it sounds like we're on the right track, at least by starting.
And it's going to happen automatically.
Yeah.
Because once people go from right to left in their thinking,
right.
They're going to require, they're going to demand that there be alignment between the input, the throughput, and finally the output. And it's a logical way of thinking. I mean, it's absolutely logical.
Yeah, it does.
Because you can't get the outcomes without doing what goes to the left.
That's right.